Hello, hello everybody. Welcome in. Welcome in today. Thanks for joining me. We're going to be painting skin tones. Hi everybody. Hello, our lovely Joanne who is modding today. Those of you who are joining for the first time, welcome in. I hope you brought some stuff to paint with. I will be painting in acrylics and oils today. And but you can paint along digitally, you can paint along traditionally, whatever you feel like. We're going to be going over skin tones. How's everybody doing? Liliana, first stream here. I am glad. Welcome in. Welcome to Wing Canvas. If you if we haven't actually met before, my name is Faye. And I am an instructor here and really excited to be streaming today. I haven't streamed in a long time actually, so pretty excited. Yeah, let me know where you're joining from and we'll get started shortly. So if you haven't guessed already, we're going to be painting lovely Lupita Nyong'o. She won the poll by like a long shot, 51%. So, and she's just, I think she was also voted like the most beautiful woman of the year. So it's a really, really nice pick. I'm very happy that she won. So, let's see here. Gonna move my I'm actually gonna be using a mixed media palette today, but I will be using water-soluble water-soluble oils, which is like my new favorite thing to paint with. It's just like it's got all the qualities of oil without the solvents, without the smell. I was a little skeptical at first, but I love it. So I love all this channel's tutorials. They've really helped my art journey. Thank you so much, Biscuit. Welcome in. So our mission at Wing Canvas is to make art education easily accessible to everyone. So you can tune in for live lessons every weekend, Saturday and Sunday at 3 p.m. Eastern time. And yeah, we have an updated banner. So from left to right, that's Iggy, Faye, that's me, Jesse, that's Jesse Gremlin there, Arunya and Josh. Josh has a great updated avatar too, so there's our lovely little card. If you didn't know, our growing community is filled with tons of art nerds, and you know, we art nerds have to stick together. So if you're an art nerd too, be sure to check out the links to our social media. And check out our website for class offerings where you can get critique guidance and encouragement from our instructors, because we're not just a YouTube channel, we are a school of illustration. I also want to personally thank our incredible patrons and YouTube members who support us in making free art education content. So if you do become a member, members get really cool perks like exclusive chats with our creators, weekly live critiques on Discord, and class recordings. And speaking of the critiques, if you guys haven't joined a live critique yet, these are our hours. So all of our creators specialize in something different. Jesse specializes in digital illustration, comics, and creature design. Iggy in digital painting, anime art, and cartooning. Josh is our animator and character designer. And I specialize in figure drawing, portraiture, and painting. I actually do digital art too. I kind of do a little bit of everything. So I would say mixed media is really my thing. Yeah, so if you want to help support the channel or accelerate your learning, consider becoming a member. So you can become a member on YouTube or Patreon. Our lovely members join us and paint along with us, and then can submit their artwork in the Discord for critique. All right. So if you guys haven't seen our monthly challenge, this month's challenge is colorations. So we want to see your color explorations. We want to, and it's specifically like, you know, July is the summer. It's the beginning of summer. There's festivals happening everywhere. Lots of color, lots of flowers everywhere. Lots of, you know, just like lots of daylight, you know. And so we've gotten some awesome submissions, and I just want to show off some of these amazing pieces. So if you submit your artwork, join our Discord, and then we have a monthly challenge every month. Sometimes we release it a little bit early, and then if you submit and your work is chosen, you get to be featured on stream. So our first submission is by Daydreamer / Night Thinker. Really cool screen name. I like that a lot. So I thought this piece was beautiful. Obviously, any rendition of Michelangelo's David is both a challenge and you know, a classic study, even though you've kind of went very abstract geometric, but you were still able to maintain the realistic values. So I thought you did a really, really nice job. And even like the angle, that's a really difficult angle to do. So really, really nicely done. Next submission is by Midnight. I love seeing traditional artwork. We get a lot of digital submissions, which is great, but you know, I always like seeing traditional work as well. And it looks like this piece was done with marker and colored pencil. Really fun combination. And yeah, I like it a lot. I just like the bright colors. And I think I chose all portraits coincidentally. And you know, just this one, our third submission is by Lukewarm Potato. It's funny, we have a lot of potatoes on our server. There's like lukewarm potato, there's undercooked potato, there's a bunch of potatoes. Love our potatoes. This piece I thought was just so uplifting. You know, the angles of the faces are also really difficult to do. And this reminds me a lot of Morocco. I don't actually know where this is, but it reminds me of when I was in Morocco and just kind of like looking up and feeling the breeze, but also being in the, you know, like the narrow streets, you know, within the town. But I just love the splash of color in the middle while everything else is so neutral. And I love how the direction of the head and the eye like directs you right to the color. So I thought, you know, compositionally this piece was beautiful, and there's like a chicken in it, which is great. It's like a fun little find. Really nice work. Thank you so much for submitting. And if you haven't already, this month is not over yet. There's going to be a lot more streams, so do get those submissions in if you want to have a chance to be featured on stream. All right, so let's get to painting, guys. Let me know what you guys are painting with. I wanted to do sort of a mixed media approach, which I teach in a lot of my classes. And, you know, I would say that my favorite painting medium to work with is oils, but Guys, is my sound back? I moved my mic and I think the plug went a little bit loose, but you guys can hear. All right, great. So sorry about that. I am using a podcast mic, and so the cord is very, very tight. Thanks for letting me know. All right, so I was talking about mediums. I will be using Liquitex acrylic gouache for my base layer. So not really my base layer for the face, but more like my background layer or a tone. And then on top of that, I will be using water-soluble oils. So if you're working with watercolors, that's great. If you are working with gouache, digital, whatever you have is good, you know. If you're working digitally, that's great too. Okay, so I need to get out this good old palette knife. As much as I like these dispensers, they do get clogged, and so I find myself having to take out colors with a palette knife. So I do want to try to limit my colors today, but I always like to start off with like a fun color for my tone. So I like to tone my canvas with a fun color because I feel like it livens up everything, right? So if you're not sure what this means, it's like the equivalent of starting on a background color that's not white. So the colors I'm using specifically are, I'm using a magenta and a white. And so magenta tends to turn purple as it is mixed with white. So I'm hoping that, I have no idea what color this is going to make yet, but I'm hoping that when I mix these two colors together, it's going to be this like light purple color. So white is a color that changes the properties of other colors. I don't think I've ever done a painting without white. So I always have like a big tube of white. But you can see that white kind of cools every color, right? So if you are not careful and you think that like if you're gonna mix a skin tone and you just add white to the same color, it loses all of the richness in that color. Okay. Are you guys still okay? Can you guys hear me okay? If you're painting along with me, please let me know what you're using. Oh, great. Thanks, Joanne. And hey, Kevin. Kevin is our lovely Sunday mod. All right, great. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tone my canvas with this like bright pink color. Since it is colorations, right? I thought it would be fun to show you how to take a reference photo that you can reference for values and skin tones, but then change the background color so that you can shift the color of your skin tones towards anything that you like. So this pink is actually a little bit too dark for my liking, but I'm just going to put it all down and then I'm going to add some more white to it. So the reason why I tone my canvas with acrylic is because it dries much faster and I don't have to wait for it to dry for me to, you know, paint on top of it. I mean, I do have to wait, but it's like five minutes versus if I used oil, it would be like 2 days. But sometimes, you know, with oils, you can tone your canvas as well with just like a wash. So if you use like a burnt umber or like a some type of thin wash with solvent, it actually dries pretty quickly. But one of my teachers back in the day was like, oh, you know, you could just tone your canvas with acrylic. And I was like, what? No way. And so ever since I got that tip, that's what I've been doing. And I've been able to speed up my painting time by a lot. But yeah, I'm not really a paint snob. Like, I'll use whatever I can find to paint. Obviously, you know, I have my preferences. Like for gouache, I really like Winsor Newton. For acrylics, I'm a big Liquitex fan, although I do have some golden stuff as well. And for watercolor, I'm using Marie's right now, and it's okay. Like, it's not too bad. But yeah, I'm not like a big brand snob when it comes to colors. So I did want to kind of maintain the light background, so I'm just adding a little bit of white so that my background isn't super flat. So if you guys are here, let me know who you voted for in the poll. Did you guys vote for Lupita? Did you vote for Spider-Man? I also wanted to do a light purple because it sort of complements the color of Lupita's outfit, which is this gold color. And if I have time to get to the outfit, I'll show you guys how I would approach painting gold. But we actually have a stream coming up where I'm going to show you how to mix any color. So that'll be a fun experiment. Let's see. Kevin, yeah, what are you painting? Are you going to be painting with me today? Are you painting Lupita as well? Just gonna catch up with the chat while this paint dries. Hello, Caroline. I am having a good day. I went for dim sum this morning. I know Josh is a big fan of dim sum. But basically, if you've never been to dim sum before, it's like a very, very noisy, crowded Chinese restaurant, and you go in and you order these like little tapas, and it's like you have to go to dim sum to share food. Like, nobody goes really by themselves. And the more people you go with, the more things you get to try. And I am really, really full. So I'm probably gonna skip lunch. You just drew on the wrong layer. I do that all the time. All the time. Kevin voted for this one. Great. I'm considering starting painting today. Oh, awesome. What are you painting with? NerfNet says, does acrylic toning change the canvas texture, and how painting over that would adhere? That's a good question. So you can't paint oil on top of acrylics. Sorry, you can't paint acrylics on top of oils, but you can paint oils on top of acrylics. The only time you could paint acrylics on top of oils is if you like sand an oil painting. So let's say you wanted to recycle a canvas, right? You would sand your canvas, and then you would paint over it with gesso, and then, you know, sand it, gesso it again, sand it, gesso again. And then once you finish gessoing it, then it's like a fresh surface and you can paint acrylic on top of it, because gesso is designed to adhere paint to the canvas. And acrylic will adhere to the canvas, and it depends on the type of acrylic you're using. So that's why, you know, you want to use better quality acrylic or use like a very thin layer. But I don't really like painting on white because I don't like those little indentations in the canvas showing up. So I will almost always tone my canvas a different color, because I just don't like how that looks. But while this is drying, I'll show you guys some class demos. Actually, our spring class has just ended. We're in summer right now. So I just finished teaching a week of figure drawing camp. But basically, the last mentorship class I did, I was actually painting skin tones. So these are studies of skin balls using the Zorn palette. So the Zorn palette is the palette I'll be using today. It's basically a red, yellow, black, and white palette. Only 2 colors plus black and white, and you can get a really nice range of color, obviously, plus this pink color, right? So I'm going to start with the Zorn and probably sneak in other colors. But these studies, this one's not done yet, but these are both painted with the Zorn palette. And you can get really beautiful, delicate skin tones just using 2 colors plus black and white. It's crazy, right? So you don't actually need a whole bunch of colors. Like if you're just getting started, you don't actually need to buy like a set, you know, one of those big sets of like 24, 48 colors. Like you really only need a big tube of white and then your primaries, right? Finger painting right now. That's great. That's good. I love finger painting. Yeah, so if you have any questions at all, you can ask me. Any questions about color or any questions about mediums or portraiture in general, go ahead and throw them in the chat. All right, so first of all, I'm going to take out my colors and sort of introduce the materials I'll be using today. So I'm going to take out some white. So this is Winsor Newton Artisan brand water mixable oil color. And I really love water mixable oils. Let me know in the chat if you've ever tried this medium or if you've ever tried oil painting. Let me know if you've ever tried oil painting, first of all. Because I still have tons of oil paints that I need to use up. But ever since I started using water mixable oils, I was like, it's so easy because the cleanup is so easy. This tube is a little bit gunky. But yeah, this is what you can use palette knives for, cleaning up everything. Millie Kitty did once. Yeah, did you like it? I think like if you use oil paints once, you might either like love it or hate it. It can be very difficult to use if like you started painting with, like if you started painting with like watercolor, oil painting can be very frustrating because it's it doesn't dry very quickly. Like it stays wet for a long period of time. But if your first medium was oil, you probably will love it for life. My first medium was oil. I think it was oil. Yeah, like I used oil before acrylic and before watercolor. I think mine was oil, watercolor, acrylic, and then gouache. That was the order I learned everything in. It's because I have some painters in my family, and I was lucky enough to be exposed to painting from a young age. Okay, I like to keep my black like far away from my white because it will contaminate the white more so than the other colors. So that's why I'm kind of putting my colors in this order. And then if you didn't know, if you're using like a wax paper palette like I am, you can actually clean it. So I'm just kind of dipping it in water, and I'm using an orphan sock. Got lots of orphan socks. My studio is a sock orphanage, and these socks have a second life and a second purpose. Okay. So see, it's like brand new again. Good hack. I've never used oils, but they're so pretty looking. I know, right? Like they're so nice. I've done oil painting in class before, but never on my own. Trying to get into painting, but I have no motivation at all. Well, hopefully this will motivate you. I'm just kind of patting this to see if it's dry yet. Liliana says it takes a week to dry. It's true. Like oil paints, there's a range. Like if you put oil paints on really thick, like let's say you just took a tube and you just like globbed it on, right? This glob of paint might take like a month to maybe 2 months to dry, especially white. Like white takes longer to dry. Black and darker colors take less time to dry. So if you're using like earth tones, like let's say you're using burnt umber or burnt sienna. This is burnt sienna, and like any earth tone takes a lot less time to dry. So, you know, you probably wouldn't want to tone your canvas with like white and another color if you're using oil, because it'll take forever to dry. You probably just want to use a transparent wash of an earth tone, because it just dries faster. So like if you did that, it would probably take, I would say a day to 2 days to dry. Like if it was just a wash, right? Is the audio low, or is it just my device? What do you think, guys? Do I need to adjust my mic so that it's louder? I can adjust it. Just a minute. Okay, I turned it up a little bit. Let me know if the sound is better. What should I start with for painting? Anything. Whatever you can, whatever you have. You can start with like kids paints. You can start with beet juice, like whatever you have. Digital. On your phone, anything. Anything is better than waiting around to find the best thing. With using 3 colors, will undertones factor in here? If it's undertone, if you mean like a tonal painting, it could, but I don't have time for that today. Because I only have an hour and a half scheduled for this stream. So as far as I know, you can. Like, you can do whatever you'd like, right? But it's just with the time restriction. I will not be doing a tonal painting today. If I did do a tonal painting, I would probably do it in the two colors that I had. So like the that dark magenta and the white. All right. It's better now? Okay, good. Let me see if I can turn it up a little bit more. All right, how about now? Is that better? I just have to be really, really close to the mic. Okay, guys, let's get started. So the first thing that I'm gonna do while this thing is dry, like it's almost dry, it's a little bit tacky, but like it's not going onto my hands at all. So I'm gonna do a drawing. I actually don't do a lot of drawing when I paint, especially when I paint portraits, only because like if you draw too much, then your painting becomes really precious, or sorry, your drawing. Like if you do this perfect drawing, right, then it's kind of like you are less bold with your brush strokes. Like even though there is drawing involved in painting, painting is still painting. Like if you ever see, for example, if you've ever been in one of Jessie's streams, even though she works digitally, and even though her drawings are colored, right, they're still more like drawings, because drawings rely a lot on line art and a lot on line work. Whereas with painting, like if you've ever been to one of Iggy's streams, right? Iggy's streams, he likes to paint with like flat shapes instead of lines. So that's kind of the approach, right? Right now, I'm sort of mapping out the face, you know, just to make sure that I'm getting my proportions right. I'm kind of drawing in this ball and shield, so to speak. You know, finding like the middle of her face and the line of her eyes, nose, mouth, and all that stuff. But when I'm painting, I'm still going to be blocking in certain shapes. Like I'm not really going to be outlining things at all. So it's a very different approach than just purely drawing. I mean, I suppose you could just sketch with tones as well, but painting, when I'm like in painting mode, my brain is like thinking about shapes and tones and edges, whereas when I'm in drawing mode, my brain is thinking about things like proportions and line, right? Like line art. So if you're wondering what I'm drawing with, I am drawing with chalk. Just like chalk pastel. I really like chalk pastel because I like it not just to draw with, but I like it as a tool for painting, because I used to draw in pencil on top of my canvas, and it always was really hard to erase. It was smudgy, like I really disliked it. And so once I sort of discovered chalk, how did I discover chalk? I think I was like stuck on an oil painting and I just wanted to draw over it. So then I was like, well, if I draw over an oil painting with chalk, I can just like rub it off, right? And that's exactly what I did. And I was like, oh, wow, this works really well. So I've been drawing with chalk ever since. Could there be a video on how to do eye strain or how to use saturated colors in the future? I actually have a video tutorial on saturation, on like painting saturation specifically using gouache. So I believe I used a red color, and I showed in the tutorial how to desaturate it. So if you Google wing canvas saturation, you will find it. Eye strain, we go over eye strain in several videos. So if you check out our color playlist, we have a playlist that's like dedicated to color. So we have one on like the elements of art color. I know a lot of these videos by heart because I actually review them and approve them before they go out. So Kevin actually also knows a lot. Kevin publishes our videos, and Joanne designs our thumbnails. You guys are really here with the whole team, minus our editors. So really what I'm doing in the drawing phase is just kind of drawing in shapes and just making sure that things are kind of aligned, making sure that, you know, her nose, mouth, cheek, everything's kind of in the right place. For example, drawing in the bottom of her nose will really help me find other landmarks, like, you know, like where the peak of her cheek is. So her cheek right now, the peak of the cheek is like aligned with the nose, maybe slightly lower, and I can see mine is a little bit too high. So like little things like that to help me figure out the proportions is kind of why I do this. All right. So if you're drawing digitally, you would probably choose a background color. I like to keep the background kind of painterly, just because like if I start off painterly, I feel like it's going to end painterly. You know, if I start off really stiff, it's probably going to feel pretty stiff in the end. So I kind of like to set up the mood and the overall feeling of the process by starting off very loose. And I have my water here. You can see it's the same color, so pretty, as the background. So I'm really just dipping my finger in. I'm finger painting, guys. Finger painting negatively. And just erasing some of the lines that I don't want. You can see it erases beautifully. This is another reason why I use acrylics, because I can draw on top of it with chalk, whereas I can't do that with oils, right? I would have to use a brush for my drawing. So I'm just kind of comparing, you know, my negative space here to make sure that my face, or her face, is the right size. So that's about all the drawing I do in my pieces. Where did I find my reference? On the internet. I believe that this piece, I just Googled Lupita Nyong'o and found a, I was mostly looking for good lighting. So I think this is a photo of her from an awards show. She had this like lovely updo, but usually I use images from pixels.com or other royalty-free images. But in this case, for this piece, because it's a celebrity, right? I just, good old Google. I believe this is Getty. Getty Images. Yeah. Yeah, if you're painting a portrait, especially a portrait study, do not choose a portrait that's like a glamour shot, right? Flat lighting, super like photoshopped. Like, do use a photo that is more natural. So let me just show you why this photo is more natural, okay? So this is the actual photo. I cropped it, but you can actually, like, if you zoom in, you can see all of the, like, the little bumps on her skin. You can see so much detail. It's outdoors, right? So outdoor light is usually the best type of light. The worst is like studio lighting on both sides where there's no single light source. Or flash photography. That's also like really bad. Okay. So I'm probably, the next thing I'm gonna do is after my chalk drawing, I'm going to draw her again. So this is kind of like a more refined drawing. I'm trying to catch up with the drawing so I can follow along. Yeah, don't worry. Go at your own speed. You can always pause the stream and there will be a replay saved onto the channel. So all I really did was I drew like a ball and a line, like a center line that came down on the ball. But since she's smiling, everything's kind of distorted, right? Like her cheek is a little bit more like more puffed up, right, than normal. Her chin is a little bit lower, like the face changes when you smile. So well, I was gonna do a drawing, but really what I'm doing is I'm just kind of putting in almost like a geometric shape outline. I like keeping it geometric because it's easier to see where things, where corners turn, right? Like if I used a lot of curvy lines, it's fine. It's just a little bit harder to find landmarks. So like for her forehead, I could curve it, right? But everything else, I like the kind of chiseled look. And this is just kind of like a second opportunity to double check my drawing. And the reason why I like to use red is because, like, she's got a darker skin tone, right? And so if I used if I used a color that was too light or too dark, it's very hard to work with. I find that, like, it's hard to paint on top of, right? So if I use black to do the outline, it would be very hard to cover that up. Same thing with white. Like if I used white, I don't know if you guys have ever tried to mix color and like you try to add white to a color or you try to add black to a color and it just takes forever. Like it either changes the color too quickly or it doesn't change it quickly enough. And if you try to cover up something that's like done with black, it's very hard. Same thing with white. It's very hard. It just kind of mixes. And then whereas like if I tried to cover up red or like a mid-tone, it's way easier. So I just finished teaching head structure, so I feel like I've been practicing all week. But this is a very, very challenging angle. So if anything, like if you're painting along with me, I would suggest not trying to do everything. Like just pick one thing that you want to focus on. Like, do you want to focus on getting a head structure right? Do you want to focus on skin tones? Do you want to focus on like just painting something? Right? Just picking up your paintbrush. How would you measure a successful painting session? Don't try to do everything. Like, don't be like, oh, I want it to be perfect and I want to finish it and I want this and that. Like, choose one thing and just focus on that if you're a beginner, because otherwise it can get really overwhelming. So my focus today is to get a decent likeness and also exaggerate, like have a little bit more fun with the color. The other reason I use red is because of subsurface scattering. If you don't know what that means, it's a very technical term for the way that light bounces off of skin and gets absorbed into the skin. So if you can imagine, like, let's imagine that you're standing in sunlight, right? And let's say you're backlit. Your ears would be very red, right? And that's because, like, the sun is going in, it's like going into your ear, and half of it is going through the ear, right? And half of it is bouncing, like bouncing off of the ear. So the little bit that goes through the ear is what's causing that redness. So it's like same thing as the, as if you were, for example, if you put a flashlight sort of underneath your hands and you see like the red coming through your fingers, right? Because our skin is translucent. Okay, so after my drawing, the first thing I'm gonna do is paint in her hair, because her hair is the darkest part of the painting, right? It's like the darkest value, which means if I paint in the hair, then it kind of sets a context for everything else, right? Like if I want to establish my values early, then I want to paint in like the darkest parts and the lightest parts. In terms of brushes, I busted out my Escada brushes. I bought a set of Escada brushes years ago. They're made in Barcelona. They're like fancy brushes. And I've always like saved them because they were always too precious to use. So another tip, if you are a beginner, like don't go out there and buy very expensive brushes. You will be scared to use them. Your brushes in the beginning, like when you're a beginner, are abused. Like you're not using them properly, right? So instead of like buying really, really expensive brushes from the get-go, it's better to get yourself just like student grade brushes, right? So that you actually use them. Even for me, like I've been saving these brushes. I'm like, oh, there's gonna be a time where I'm gonna use them, but no, I shouldn't have saved them. I should have been painting with them. Okay, so for her hair, I'm just gonna block it in first with black. Just blocking it in. The only thing like you really need to know about painting hair is just to keep it very soft. We also have lots of tutorials on hair on the channel. If you are struggling with hair or you want to do a study, you can check out some of our tutorials. We've got drawing tutorials, we've got anime hair. I think we did a series on anime hair like way in the beginning. It's a very old video, but still good and relevant. And then I did a stream on hair, which we also turned into a video. So check those out if you want tips on hair. But you can see I'm just really blocking it in as a shape. Keeping the edges really soft. Like, that's it. Just nice and flat with a big brush. Hair is always a bit of a struggle. Yeah, I know, right? You know what it is, though? It's like our brains get in the way of a lot of things. Like, if we think about hair, we're like, oh, hair's hard, right? Like, it's not. It's just like painting anything else. Like, you are using pigment and you're putting it on a canvas, right? Like, your subject can be abstracted into shapes, values, lines, colors, right? So don't think of hair as hair. Think of it as shapes, values, and colors, and textures, right? And then it doesn't seem as hard. You have to trick your brain into seeing things that are perceived as hard, like noses, hair, you know, whatever you struggle with, and just ask yourself, like, what shapes do I see? Okay, so we're finally gonna get into skin tones. I'm gonna keep my skin tones at the top and my other colors at the bottom. So I will show you how to mix a darker skin tone using these 4 colors. So specifically the colors I'm using are cadmium red hue. By the way, hue just means it's not actually cadmium, because cadmium is poisonous. Anything with cadmium is poisonous and very expensive. So you can just buy the hue. The hue just means it was made with other pigments that is not cadmium. I also have cadmium yellow hue. Definitely get the hue. It's you know, less toxic and it's cheaper. Like, why not, right? And I'm using ivory black, but if you don't have these exact colors, you can use other reds, other yellows. It really doesn't matter. It matters a little bit, but not by much. Like, all colors are slightly warmer or slightly cooler. Black and white are both cool colors, and red and yellow are both warm colors, right? So it makes a nice balance. You'll notice that there's no blue on my palette. So this is a limited color palette without blue. Luckily there's no blue in the image either, but you can make blues by using black and white. It becomes a perceived blue. So it's not really a you know, like a true blue, but it will appear blue depending on the colors you put around it. So this is Chevel's rule of color, which actually Jessie just did a stream about. Colors can appear differently depending on their context. Okay, so this is the Zorn palette blue. You can see it's a gray, but if I put it next to like orangey colors, it's gonna look blue. Okay, so if I have a gray like this, right, I can kind of use it for, there's not actually a lot of gray in her, like maybe in some of her hair, right, that has like a little bit of blue, but because my background is this pinkish color, I would have to add a little bit of red to that, so there would be like more purpley highlights. But I started with this this tone because I wanted to get the values first. So skin tone is just like a mix of all of the colors in various proportions. So I started with black, then I added red, now I'm adding yellow to it until I get like a nice orangey brown, like a saturated brown color. Right? Black and white are also very desaturated, whereas the red and yellow are very saturated. Hey Starverse, what have we gone over so far? I've talked a little bit about color, a little bit about this palette that I'm using called the Zorn palette. The Zorn palette is my favorite limited color palette. Like when I actually paint people, I do use a much more full palette. Like I don't use a limited palette, but I will often start with a limited palette. Because starting with a limited palette just reduces a lot of work, because you're focusing more on your values and like colors you are comfortable with, rather than you know, having too much. It's kind of like you go to a restaurant and like canteens, if you guys have ever been to like a canteen, or like a restaurant that has a ton of choices on their menu, like their menu is like 10 pages. It takes forever to choose something. Like unless you have a default, like you always go there for the club sandwich, right? Then then like you know what you're getting. But like if you go to a restaurant and it's your first time there and there's like 300 things on the menu, it's so hard to make a choice. So it's like the same thing with painting. Like the more colors you have, the harder it is to choose what you want to use. So that's why like limited colors are really smart. Like the best limited palette for beginners is just grayscale. For people, like for people, I would probably use maybe like a brown and white instead of a black and white. But for other subjects, black and white is fine. Like if you're working digitally, you can just, you know, work with black and white. And then apply color on top using a color layer. Actually, we are working on a video right now for digital artists, showing them exactly how to do that. But yeah, I'm just like trying to block things in with like a giant brush. Hey, Marcy! We were wondering if you were going to join today. Yeah, I'm doing traditional today. Yep. Good old oil painting. Actually, it's mixed media. We are using water-soluble oils. So you can see, like, I'm putting in these browns, but it looks very odd on the pink. Like, it doesn't look like the reference picture. It's hard to compare the values, you know, when your background color is different. So what I might do is kind of lighten up the pink around the edges so that I can get a better sense of my values. I can see that the values sort of like underneath her eye and underneath her neck are darker, and like this part around her, the right side of her neck, and like this part here is similar in value. It's like slightly cooler, but similar in value, right? Right now, I'm just kind of worried about, I'm not worrying so much about my my color as much as my values. So right now I'm trying to get this this brown underneath her neck to not look super desaturated. Like as soon as I add black, the color just has it just looks so flat, so I have to add like a lot of red to it to make it rich. So there will be like some colors that are just impossible to get with this limited palette, so you just have to focus on values and do what you can, and Chevreul's rule will take care of the rest, meaning that if you can give your piece enough context, it will solve itself. Marcy, do you actually paint? Like, do you paint with, I know you paint digitally, but do you paint traditionally at all? Just stopping by before you sleep. That's so nice. Yeah, you did paint in college. What did you use? I was just saying that oil paints were like my first medium, which is why I'll always have a soft spot for it. Watercolor, acrylic, and oil. Yeah, okay. Yeah. Same here. I used oil first and then watercolor and then acrylic. But I guess those are the big three. There's still quite a few different mediums that I want to try. Like I want to try encaustic. It just looks so fun. And I also want to try Chinese watercolors. Okay, so got some of those browns in. Really, like, the Zorn palette is not great for browns, to be honest. It's good for skin tones in general, but mixing browns can kind of be a pain. Whereas, like, if you just had a brown, like if I just had burnt sienna, it would just be this brown and I wouldn't have to mix 3 colors. But, you know, it is calibration, so it's a good excuse for me to challenge myself in this way. The artist desk. Okay, you caught up. Great. My prof knows if we procrastinated thanks to oil paintings. Yeah. I know, you can't really get away with a lot. Well, that's not true. You can't really get away with like tight deadlines with oils, but you can. But oils is so forgiving. Like if you make a mistake, you can scrape it off. Or you can like blend effortlessly, right? It's so nice. It has a lot of nice properties. Joanne and Kevin, have you guys ever used oils? Just curious. And watercolor is your favorite medium. You know, I am loving watercolor right now. Actually, I like gouache more. I think I like the mediums that I'm more comfortable in more. I guess that's normal, but I've just been more practiced in solid painting mediums like oils and acrylics. Watercolor I find is so finicky. Like I like watercolor for quick studies. And I just love how easy it is to set up, and I love watercolor for sort of pen and ink illustrations and that kind of stuff. But I find it very unforgiving. So I'm not a huge fan of using watercolor for things like streams and stuff, because if I mess up, it's a lot harder to fix my mistakes. Yeah, I remember oil paints. Oil dries for it takes forever to dry, which made it pretty interesting stories for us commuting students carrying our oil paintings. Yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember one time I pulled an all-nighter because I had 3 assignments. This was in university. I had 3 assignments due at the same time. I went to art center, so I had a design class, I had like a painting class, and all my assignments happened to be due on the same day. I was running on like 2 hours sleep, maybe less than that, maybe like an hour and a half. I had spent the entire night painting and then working on a poster. And I remember I had a hot Starbucks coffee, I think, in one hand, and a oil painting in the other hand, and I had my my poster under my armpit, like sandwiched under my armpit, and I was carrying a portfolio case, so I was like a mess. And I remember falling down the stairs and holding on to all these items. So I fell down the stairs on my shins, and it was very, very painful. But I saved my artwork. I was so proud of myself. Like, I was like, oh, I didn't spill coffee on my artwork, but like my shins were bruised for like 4 months. Bruises don't heal easily on shins, apparently, because you don't get a lot of blood flow there. You know, back in the day, I remember printing this poster. This poster was like, oh my gosh, how big was it? It was huge. It was like 30 by 40, and I had it printed and mounted professionally. I think it cost over $100. And I went to school in the States, right? So it was $100 US for a print for a student. So like, my shins were not worth $100 US apparently, because I was like, I was just, all I was concerned about was that print and my oil painting, which I remember I hated, and I painted over it. But now I actually wish that I saved it, because I tell my students all the time, I'm like, if your paintings suck, like that's normal. That's how it is in the beginning for everybody, right? It's just that the professionals, you don't see their bad, sucky artwork, right? From when they were just students, because they burned it, deleted it, painted over it, whatever they could do to never look at it again. But now I kind of wish I saved some, because then I could actually show my students how bad I was and how far I've come. So I encourage you to save some bad paintings, right? Don't throw them all away. Save some of the bad ones. The artist just says, I have oil paints, but I don't know where to start, and I also heard about how hard it is to wash brushes, so I have been procrastinating. It's not hard. You just need the proper tools to wash them with. So I use like a brush cleaner. You could use Gojo. Like, I use like a oh, I forget what it's called. I can show you guys later, but I use special conditioning soaps for my brushes. But I'm overall, like, I'm not very good with my brushes. I don't really take care of them. But the best way to clean your brushes is to like scrape off all the colors with a palette knife. And then you know, wash them. So today I'll be washing them with water, because these are water solubles, right? Otherwise you need to use solvent, and yeah, it does get kind of messy. Starver says, I love seeing the lighting and how it affects the contours. Thank you. I love the lighting as well. Like, I think on her face it's actually quite subtle. I want to get the skin tone right first and like the values right first, and then I will adjust the color, right? Because if I try to focus on too many things, I get kind of lost. So I got to focus on one thing at a time. So right now I'm focusing on value and trying to get in my my warms and cools. And if you find that your painting's kind of taking forever, it's probably because your brush is not big enough. So just like ditch those little brushes and get yourself a big thick brush like mine. Like, look at how big my brush is. It's like the size of her eye. Like, I just painted her ear with one stroke, just to give you an idea of how big you can go. Joe says, I haven't, but I have a few small tubes of them at home. I might try after this. Yay! Bust them out! Use those paints! Liliana says, I prefer watercolor because it's so flowy, and I kind of feel like it covers up my mistakes better. Well, see, with watercolor, this is just my personal take, but with watercolor, I find that if you go over it too many times, it just feels very overworked. Like with any paint, right? Not just watercolor. So, I really like paintings that look very effortless, and I don't like painting stuff over and over again. So I like gouache, because gouache, you can get that opacity, but you can mix gouache with watercolor, which just makes it really nice. Marcy says, we have the same exact mindset, Faye. I'd rather get bruised than lose a grade over trashed artwork. Looking back now, like, my shins have never been the same. I still have kind of weird discoloration on my shins from that incident, from falling down a flight of stairs on my shins while holding my artwork in both hands, and my coffee. My coffee did spill a little bit. I think I spilled it on my shoes, but I was just like glad that I didn't spill it on myself. All right. Good night, Marcy. The artist does. Yeah, I noticed you doing that with your palette knife, and I thought it was very smart. I think I might do that with my paints too. So with oils and acrylics, your paintbrush gets really gunky, right? And then when it's gunky, it's so difficult to use. Like, it drives me nuts. So, and then like if you just like stuck that gunky brush in your water, right? What happens to your water? It just gets gunkier. Like, my water is very, very clean because I don't actually wash my brush a lot. I wipe it, and I will, so I'll wipe my brush and I'll clean it with my palette knife. So I just like, you can save a lot of color by, you know, scraping it off with your palette knife. So I wanted to add some highlights, just kind of, I almost said pencil them in, but block them in. And I actually want these highlights to be slightly warmer. On her, they're actually cooler. Like in the photo, they're cooler, but in my painting, I'm gonna make them warmer just because of this pink I have all around her. I feel like it makes more sense for it to be warm rather than cool. And then this just kind of helps me, again, figure out what kind of values I want. And you might be like, oh, this is good progress. You know, this is like very fast. But the first 80% of the painting takes as long as the last 20%. I also have a painting sketch I was going to do with acrylic, but seeing this live gave me an idea. What if I try oil? Yeah, try oil. Trust me, the water soluble, oh my goodness. I was never a believer of it. In the beginning, I wasn't convinced. Everybody was like, oh, you should try it, it's great. And I'm like, yeah, but I have all these, I just invested so much money in all these like traditional oils, and I want to use them, and now they're just sitting there not being used because I can't be bothered with all the solvents, especially like at a home studio when there's not really a lot of ventilation, right? Yeah, I feel like I can't, I can't be bothered. Would you suggest painting in grayscale traditionally when trying to figure out the values? Yes. Yes, yes, yes. So what I would do, like if I was teaching this as a lesson, I would probably do a underpainting. So something like this. This is an underpainting that I did in my painting mentorship class. And so it was done with, so this is a wash with burnt umber. And so we did a light wash to kind of get rid of the white, and then we painted this with burnt umber and white, and so it's like a tonal study, right? So then after this, then you can paint the color on top, and then you don't really have to worry about your values. You just have to make sure that the color of your paint matches the values underneath, right? So if like you put a color on and it kind of works and it disappears, then, or it blends in with the value, then you got it. The reason I haven't started painting it is because I don't have enough black paint, so I was waiting until I could get more. But now I can start right now. I have a set of oil paints new and unopened. Awesome! Yeah, that's great. Definitely start. Just start with whatever. You don't need black. Like, you don't have to use this palette either, but like for years I painted without using black. I was like, I don't want my colors to, you know, I was really into like impressionist paintings, impressionist painters, and like specifically Monet, who never used black. But there was an artist called Manet, and he used black, so that's how I remember them. They were around at the same time. I think they knew each other, but I now really like the color black. I use it all the time. So once I tried the Zorn palette, I was like, oh, I really like black. Whereas before, I didn't really use it all that much. Okay, so I'm gonna move on to a smaller brush, but I really should finish this neck. I want to try to get in as much as I can using this big brush before I move to my small brush, because then it's gonna take a lot more time. Okay. Starverse, I hope you're painting too. I don't know if you're painting digitally. I actually had camera issues this entire week, and I finally was able to adjust my camera before this stream. So I worked mostly digitally this week. I had planned to work traditionally, but my camera was giving me issues. But most of my students work digitally, so it worked out. But I'm definitely more comfortable working traditionally, but digital is so much easier. And with digital, you can kind of like almost like expand the process. Like I could expand out, you know, all of the different phases of the artwork, and it would be really cool to see. Where you can't really do that with traditional. Okay, so right now I'm just kind of trying to fill in those blanks. So for the darks, I'm using black and red because black on its own is too dull. So I need to kind of make it, enrich it with like a bright, not a bright, but like a saturated color, like a pigmented color, like that. I can add more black to it as well, but it's really just like trying it and then seeing if it works and then adjusting, right? All right. Starver says I'm taking a break. Great. Yeah. I love watching other people paint too. It's so it's very like I'm trying to find the word, but I'm drawing a blank right now. It's very relaxing, very therapeutic. So my biggest tip for my students is to use bigger brushes. I can't tell you how many times I repeat that in my class. Like, oh, I can't catch up. What brush are you using? And then like they show me they're using like a number 4. I'm using a number 12 brush right now, just to give you some context of how big it is. If you've ever, any of you guys ever watched Bob Ross? He's like one of my heroes. Bob Ross, no? Anyone? I could watch him paint all day long. But he uses like brushes that you would use to paint your house. Like his brushes are so big. You're just like, how do you... right? But he would paint live and he would have to finish a painting in a really fast amount of time. So if he didn't use big brushes, that would be physically impossible, right? So if Bob Ross can do it and anyone can paint, you can do it. Bigger brushes actually forces you to use them better and to use brushes properly. Because like when you use small brushes, you tend to overwork stuff, right? Like it's not as effortless looking, or the results anyway. Okay. I don't really think I should do the eyes with a big brush, but I'm gonna try to block it in. I'll try to block in as much as I can. A very pretty raven flew by my window. Oh my goodness, I love ravens. They're such smart creatures and they're huge. Such smart birds. Yeah, Bob Ross. See, like, I just, you know, Bob Ross's paintings, like, the end result isn't really why I like him. It's just the way that he made me feel like I can do it and anyone can paint. And, you know, just like, just his personality, how soft-spoken he was, and how calm he made me feel. I have my little, my little Bob Ross character at my desk, you know, so whenever I'm feeling stressed, I just hear him tell me to turn it into a bird. Okay, so before I put this big brush down, I'm just going to use it to do a little bit of blending. Yeah, my little helper. Yep. Yeah, very mesmerizing tutorials. Okay, I think that's all I can do with this big brush. But no, actually, that's not right. I lied. I'm gonna do a little bit of the background. So you can see I changed the color of my background to this pink, right? But it's kind of it's a little bit hard to judge the true values next to it. So I'm actually gonna take a white and I'm gonna take out, this is where I'm starting to add in a second color. Okay, so I used magenta. I use this Liquitex, what is it called? Quinacridone magenta. And I don't have a magenta in my palette right now. I'm using a cadmium red hue, which has yellow in it. So I'm gonna pull out a magenta. I got this set of Cobra brand water-soluble colors, and it's actually a, this one is like a CMYK palette. So now I have two reds in this Zorn palette experiment. So you can see like this magenta, right, gets a color that's much more similar to the background. And so I'm just gonna make a lighter version of this color, and I'm gonna put a little bit of color variation in the background. Yeah, cats are funny. Cats, I used to have a cat. She passed away, unfortunately, but her name was Helvetica because she was like a very common looking cat. I called her Helvetica cat. She was a very common looking cat, but she was very beautiful. It's kind of like Helvetica to Ariel. If you're a font nerd, it's like Helvetica is beautiful and Ariel is I'm not gonna insult Ariel, but it's not as beautiful. But like they're very similar looking. So she was my my Helvetica. But anyway, she was such a good cat. I've had cats, like she was the first cat I ever had, and I'm actually allergic now to cats, but when I got her I wasn't allergic. And she was such a good companion. I know some of our members have cats and like they just sit on their artwork and wreak havoc, and but like their owners still love them. They get away with so much. Okay, I'm adding a little bit of this light to my background. so that I have a fuller value range. And you can see like the red that I used for the line is kind of showing up around the edges, which actually makes it a lot more lively looking than had I just used a skin tone or like a black. Yeah, Helvetica. Joey, you get it. You're a designer. You get it. You get why Helvetica is special, even though it's plain, right? Yeah. Ariel is the sun. It hurts to look at. I like that. It hurts a little bit less than Comic Sans, but it still hurts. It's kind of like, you know, PC programs, like default PC programs use Arial, whereas Macs use Helvetica. Right? It's like subtle, but does make a big difference. Ooh, I made that really dirty there. All right. Get his background's looking a little bit better. Okay. I kind of wish I picked a brush that's in between these two. Now I'm moving on to a 4. So I started with a 12. Now I'm using a 4, which I feel like is going to be too small. Let's see. Let's try a 6. So I have a size 6 and a size 4. One of them is a flat, one of them is a filbert. I like both. I think for portraits, I like filberts, just because like I feel like they're a bit more versatile. So I'm going to put in her teeth. Because the background is pink, I might put some pink in her teeth as well, and just see kind of how that works. I really dislike painting teeth. It's very hard. Very hard. The best way to paint teeth is to not paint them, right? And like I'm totally getting distracted. I'm like, ooh, I have pink, so I have like this light pink, so I'm gonna paint some sequins in. Okay, Faye, don't get distracted. Let me know if you have any questions so far about painting in general or skin tones. So I find that the term skin tones is very misleading because when you think of skin tones, you think of like peach, brown, you know, pink. But like skin tones are so much more than just those basic colors. Like if you look at like skin tones can be really any color. Like it really depends on the lighting around it, right? So if somebody's at a concert and they are being lit with these like neon colors, then their skin is going to be neon. Like there's no way that their skin is going to be, you know, what you think skin tones would actually look like. Which is why I feel like it's misleading. Because when we say, oh, we're painting skin tones, right? Our brain immediately thinks, oh, okay, I'm gonna get out my browns and I'm gonna get out like the colors that I think are skin tone colors, when actually skin tones really depend on the context of what's around it. Okay. The other thing that I see a lot of people, a very common mistake that I see a lot of people make, is they paint the whites of the eyes too bright. With her, you can see a little bit of the whites of her eyes, but like not much, and it's not really white. So the less white you can have eyes, like the whites of the eyes are actually, like if you squint and you look at her, like the whites of her eyes, they're not really pure white. It looks really odd when you paint somebody and you give them like pure white eye whites. They don't look very natural at all. Okay, let's get her eyebrows in and hopefully we can get the eye in soon. I find palette knives so satisfying. Mixing the paint is like a potion or something. Oh my goodness. Yes. Yes. And like that's another reason why I dislike small brushes, is that they don't hold paint. And mixing paints with a small brush is like trying to mix it's like trying to mix paints with like a straw. Like it's just it just gets stuck in it. It doesn't work. It doesn't hold the paint, or it holds it in a way that like it just like clogs it up. Yeah. Whereas big brushes, they hold a lot of paint, right? Much better. So skin tone is an illusion. Absolutely. 100%. Skin tone is an illusion. For example, I showed this piece earlier on, but for example, would you call this a skin tone? You know? Yeah, it is, because the lighting is wacky, right? But it's still a skin tone. Like, would you call this a skin tone? Sure, but guess what? It's gray, right? Like, it's a skin tone. I mean, if you are drawing on white paper and you are just drawing a character and they're not really in context, like there's no context around their environment, and you buy like a set of skin tone Copic markers, or like a set of skin tone colored pencils or something, right? Like, I can see how that might be useful, but ultimately skin tone is an illusion. So to master skin tones, you really need to master context, right? Which is all about your values, and your you know, starting with a background color will really help you start off with good context and help you unify everything. I'm trying to paint the nostrils in, so I have to like really concentrate. Nostrils are also really red. So I'm trying to put in as much red as I can. And I do kind of want to leave this painting like a little bit chunky, not too refined. So hopefully it stays this way and I don't get distracted by the details. Because I'm kind of liking how loose and chunky it is. Joanne says, I think a lot of beginner artists also struggle with shading skin and use black instead of a different color. Yeah, like the worst thing you could do, okay, when you're trying to get good skin tones, the worst thing that you could do is mix a color and you're like, oh, okay, great, I have a skin tone, yay. And then you're like, okay, how do I make it darker? I'm gonna add black to it. Because in school, in elementary school, your teachers tell you black makes a color darker and white makes a color lighter. And like, even though that's true, black and white also shift colors. They change colors. So if you add black to a color, it's gonna make that color cooler, right? So like if you mixed white with red, right? The more white you mix into the red, the more purple that red is going to appear because white is cooling, right? So it'll make like a cool pink color. If you add black to your skin tone, it's going to turn into this like really dark, muddy gray color. So it's not a good idea to just add black. You have to add other colors to it. So typically speaking, when I add black to a color, I have to add yellows and reds to compensate for that desaturation. It's a big reason I appreciate the science of values because it narrows down what's important. Yeah, totally. Sky B, I am late, but I kind of understand what's happening. Good. Welcome in. Yeah, I know. It is funny how tools are classified as skin tones. It's all marketing. It's like, it's kind of like back to the paint sets that you can buy. Like, it's always nice when you're a beginner artist to get like a set of paints with like 48 colors and you're like, whoa, I can't wait to use all these colors, and it's like such eye candy, but that's such a gimmick because like you don't actually need all those colors. Using a lot of colors doesn't make you a better artist. It actually makes you like it's designed for paint by numbers, right? So it's much better to just get your primary colors or like get the Zorn colors and just practice painting with limited colors. Get yourself a big tube of white and yellow. You definitely need yellow and, you know, a primary blue, a primary red. Sometimes I prefer having a warm and cool option for each color. So I'll have like, in my full palette that I use for skin tones, I will have like an alizarin crimson, which is like a cool red, and then like a cadmium, which is a warm red. I'm like debating whether or not I want to paint her under eye circles. I feel like I need to paint her. I need to put them in, but I don't want her to look very old. Yeah, it totally depends on the setting and the lighting. Am I doing this painting face down? What does that mean? Am I doing this painting face down? I'm not really sure what you mean. I'm like avoiding the eye part, but like it's bugging me now, so I'm gonna hunker down and get the eye part figured out. Like I said, like the last little bit takes a really long time to get right, so what seemed like a really quick beginning is actually gonna slow down a lot. I mean, are you doing this painting standing up with an easel or doing it on a surface while sitting down? Neither. I am doing this painting standing up while my piece is flat on a table. So I am, my head is like, here's where, so the camera is like up here, and my camera is pointing straight down, and I'm standing up. I thought about doing an easel, but it was just, there was too much glare and I couldn't, it was hard for me to set up the lighting. Okay. I hate these little parts that I just kind of left unfinished, and now I have to fill them in. And hopefully with the right color. Okay. So, so you see, like, there are patches that seem very green, right? And it's because everything is so pink around it that it feels very green. So what I might have to do is add a little bit of like this pink lighting to the edge of her face. Right, like add a little bit of that pink back in. Her chin is very rough, so I need to fix that as well. There are also like natural what am I trying to say, pigments on your face that can appear cooler or warmer of your skin. So like, for example, the cheeks and the nose appears warmer, right, than like above the lip. Above the lip is usually cooler, and the eyebrows tend to look a little bit greener. So you can see like how the corner of her eyebrow here appears a little bit green, right? And so to get that green, I would just use a white, a black, and a little bit of yellow. So your Zorn palette is very similar to a regular palette, except you're just substituting black with green. So if I put this on, it's going to look very, very green. Right, so that looks very green. So if it's very green, I gotta put it in other parts, otherwise it starts looking weird, right? If that's like the only part of the green. So I'm gonna put some in the, you know, like in her hair, like the transition of her hair. I might put some in the sequins. Yeah, because gold is kind of green, right? Let's go back and paint in some more sequins. I can also put a little bit of green in her hair. It's really not green. It just appears green because of the pinks that are around it. So, you know, if I wanted to add in some texture in her hair. I can use this quote-unquote green to kind of do that. And actually, I should have done this with my big brush, because with the little brush, it just looks too scattered. Whereas with the big brush, it would have been a little bit nicer, but a problem I have when I'm sitting is I'm looking at it at an angle, so my drawing comes out distorted. Totally. I would agree with you. It is not the ideal way to paint, but it's the only way I can really set up my stream with proper lighting, not too much glare, and because I also stream drawing, like I just, it's just the way that I get the least amount of glare. If I was actually painting, I would not paint like this. Like if I wasn't doing a stream. Okay. I think it's time to hunker down and get that eye painted in. What time is it? Oh my goodness, I have like not too much time left. Okay. Okay. I've been having too much fun. I haven't like glanced at the time. It is almost 5 o'clock. Our streams are usually scheduled for 2 hours, but sometimes we go over if we cannot finish. The first thing I'm gonna do is put in this like pink glittery eyeshadow. It's actually yellow in the reference picture, but I'm making it pink because everything else is pink. And if I might go in and add yellow to it. So we will see. Do you follow Sam Young, aka Sam Does Art? I don't, but I have seen his videos. He's a really funny creator. I like his paintings a lot. Maybe our channel follows him. I'm not sure. Okay. Okay, so for her eyes, I need to get her gaze right. And it's very tricky to paint eyelashes. So I probably need like a very small brush to do that. I'm still using a 4, which is small for my books, but a 0 would be like the smallest brush that you could use. I hope I'm doing Lupita justice here. She's a beautiful woman, and I am running out of time to capture her beauty. So I actually need to adjust her her cheek kind of like around her eye. To make sure that it's like wrapping around in the right place. And there's a little bit of hair back here that I didn't paint in, but I can't use that brown skin tone. I have to use like a black and like a greenish color because otherwise it's gonna add on to her neck. So I might just give her a little bit of texture back here, which kind of frames her earring nicely as well. I know it's not really in the reference picture, but okay, so if, for example, if you're like, I don't really like that, or it's too much, then you can probably, I'll see if I can wipe it off. Basically just pushing my paint. In one direction. And so you'll notice I didn't actually paint the whites of her eyes. Like the whites of her eyes are pink. It's my tone, right? My skin tone color, or not my skin tone, but my like background color. And it's been my background color the whole time, which goes to show you that your background color can be really a lifesaver, because imagine if it was white, she would look very strange. It's a time saver for sure. Grelliman Drawing, you have finished your painting. That's awesome. Good for you. I haven't even finished mine. You beat me. Good job. It's much more dramatic. I'm glad. Drama is always good in artwork because it makes you feel something, right? So there's so much that I want to do with this piece, but I am running out of time, and I think it's in a pretty good place right now. I used a lot more black and red than I was expecting to, and I didn't use as much yellow as I thought I would. Interesting, because I always use more yellow than I'm always taking out more yellow than I think I need. So that kind of surprised me. And then like this blob that I put underneath her cheek, I like it, but it sticks out so much. So in this case, like what you could do is you could take like a soft brush and just blend it. So like a soft dry brush, just kind of blend it in. Blend it in a little bit. And so the last little bit of this demo is really me just paying attention to my hard and soft edges, making sure that I'm blending where I need to blend, and I might spend a little bit more time getting the details right. But like, if I had unlimited time, I would take unlimited time, and that's not good either, because then I just end up spending a lot more time than I need to. So I actually really enjoy having these streams with like a goal to finish a piece within a certain amount of time, because then it also changes my approach and my technique. So far I'm about an hour and a half into this piece. Typically speaking, I would spend about 3 hours on a portrait. This is like an 8x10. So all right. Oh yeah, I wanted to paint the sequins in, but I kind of like how unified this piece is already, and I'm not sure if adding in yellows is really going to make the piece better. So I think I'm going to leave it. I think it's great. Thank you. I was doubting that my piece was good, but it has grown on me. That's always a good feeling, right? Like when you know that you know, you were very hard on yourself in the beginning, and then like your piece actually, you look at it with fresh eyes and you're like, oh wow, that actually didn't turn out half that bad. My students this summer, because I'm teaching figure drawing, my students have been so good and so hard on themselves. Like they submit work and they're like, oh my gosh, I want to burn it. And I'm like, what? I look at it expecting it to be hideous, and I'm like, come on, this is really good. So I know a lot of artists are really hard on themselves, myself included. But try not to compare yourself with like super accomplished artists on Instagram, okay? That's not realistic. Always compare yourself to yourself. You know, what I mean by that, like compare yourself now to yourself, you know, a year ago or 2 years ago. Try not to compare yourself now to like, you know, a professional's now, because that just demotivates you, right? Like it's not really helpful. So that's why I'm like, if you make if you have a piece of art that's like super cringy, don't get rid of it. Like pin it to your wall, because every time you look at it, you're like, oh, I've gotten so much better. That will motivate you. So, I'm just stretching. Do you use underpaintings, or it depends on what you are painting? It depends on what I'm painting. If I'm painting alla prima like this, this is an alla prima piece, which means I painted it in one sitting, right? So if I only have one sitting to get something right, I don't have time for an underpainting. It's just not really possible. So I will just kind of go for it, wing it at Wing Canvas. I would do an underpainting though if I'm like teaching beginners, because even when I do the underpainting, I have some students who skip right to color. And I'm like, no, please, trust me, let's just do this underpainting. And then they're like, no, I'm gonna use a full palette. And then they're like, oh my gosh, Faye, I'm struggling so much with my colors. And I was like, yeah, I suggested an underpainting. And they're like, ah. But like those are kind of things you have to learn on your own. Like you have to kind of do it and fail, and then you're like, oh, okay, I'll do it differently next time, right? So we all do it. So yeah, if you are a beginner, underpainting. If you struggle with values, underpainting. Absolutely. If you have 2 hours and you have to finish it on stream, maybe don't do an underpainting. How do you paint gold? I will cover that in the next stream, where the title of the stream is how to mix any color. So I'll probably, I don't know what I'm doing yet, but I will be putting out a poll that you can vote for. So yeah, so if you've been painting along with me, I would love to see your artwork. So please share your artwork on the Discord, or tag us on social media. We would love to see your artwork. Tag us at Wing Canvas. I'd love to see if you have been following along, what your piece looks like. I always love seeing artwork that has been done with us on stream. And also you can submit it to the monthly challenge. Maybe we will feature it next week. And tomorrow's stream, I believe Iggy is streaming tomorrow, and he's going to be teaching you guys how to draw people in perspective in backgrounds, which is super exciting. And yeah, so if you are new to our streams or new to the channel, Wing Canvas is a school of illustration, and we love art nerds at Wing Canvas. So if you're an art nerd too, find us on social media, join our Discord. Our growing community is filled with tons of art nerds. So be sure to check out our links in the description and our website for class offerings. It is summer camp right now, summer camp season. We have a animation camp with Josh. We only have 12 spots in our live camps. So I'm doing figure drawing. Starting next week is figure drawing 2. We're going to go into some intensive anatomy and foreshortening. So if you want to get really good at drawing people, dynamic figures, so that you can draw anything, you can draw, your own characters, you can draw figures out of your head, definitely check out Figure Drawing 2. Starts next week. Character design is also starting next week. Character design 2. So if you go to wingcanvas.com and you hit the register button, you can see all of our programs at a glance. And I would love to end this stream by thanking our amazing patrons and YouTube members who support the creation of free arts education. So Patreon and YouTube members have access to live critiques. So you can get live critiques from me. My critiques are Fridays, I believe the last Friday of every month. But all of our creators have a live critique every week where if you want your artwork, if you want feedback on your artwork, you submit it on Discord in our special members channels, and we can give you feedback either asynchronously or live. So a great perk if you are learning asynchronously on your own and you're very, very busy. So yeah, thank you again for the stream. Thank you for joining me, and I hope you learned a lot. and I will see you at the next one. All right, bye-bye.